Hey, it's me. So, we've been walking this path together, and you've probably started to admit things you didn't always want to see about yourself, especially the parts that aren't so kind, the negativity, the blame, the parts that don't want to give love. And that might not sound like much, but it's everything. Being able to say, even just to yourself, yeah, that's there, shifts something deep. Before that kind of honesty, it's like walking around in the dark. You bump into people, hurt them, and don't really understand what happened. You just feel stuck, confused, guilty, and more alone than you can explain. But when you start seeing your part clearly, even if it's painful, the confusion begins to lift. There's something clean about truth. What a lot of people don't realize is that hiding our negativity creates more harm than the negativity itself. That's where the real guilt starts to build. There's the initial guilt from the unkind thought, the selfish reaction, the coldness. But when we pretend that isn't happening, when we deny it or push it onto someone else, we create a second layer of guilt. And that one runs deep. That's the guilt that drains your energy, makes you anxious, closes your heart. It's one thing to say, I don't want to love right now. That's honest. That's yours to carry. When you turn around and blame someone else for that, though, when you say it's their fault that you're closed off and you punish them for not being what you want them to be, that's where we really lose ourselves. That's where the pain gets thick and sticky. And what's tricky is how common this is. Almost everyone does it, including myself, even when we don't realize it. There's this pattern. I don't want to give, but I expect everything from you. And if you don't give it, I'll make you feel bad. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes we dress it up in logic or half truths. Underneath, the energy is the same. When someone is able to name this out loud to themselves or to another, it clears the air like a strong breeze after a storm. The more you can name the difference between what you give and what you demand, the more you start to loosen that tight defensive grip. It might sting your pride, and it frees your heart. And the body often follows. People notice they feel less depressed, less stuck. Even physical symptoms begin to ease because hiding takes effort. Carrying that second layer of guilt burns up life force. But truth gives it back. A lot of the time we convince ourselves the other person is the problem. They didn't love me enough. They weren't kind. They failed me. And maybe on some level that's true. But we often skip the part where we're also not loving, where we're withholding, judging, refusing to open. And that refusal is loud. It shapes everything. It pulls others in a tug of war they didn't agree to play. Sometimes it sounds like, you didn't give me what I wanted, so now I'll punish you. I'll act like a victim so I can blame you, and you can't say anything about it. And meanwhile, the other person might be stuck in their own struggle, their own resistance, their own fear of opening. So here you are, both scared to love, both hurting, both building cases against each other, when underneath, both of you long for connection, and no one wins. But something changes when even one person steps out of that loop. When one person says, I see what I've been doing. I've been demanding, withholding, blaming, and I don't want to do that anymore. It might not be perfect. You might still feel closed, but naming it matters. That naming is a kind of love, and it gives the other person room to breathe. maybe even enough room to see themselves more clearly. Because when we project our guilt onto others, they get tangled. They don't know what's theirs and what's yours. And that confusion makes real healing almost impossible. Someone has to go first. Someone has to be willing to untie the knot. We don't start out this way. That stance, the withholding, the defense, the negativity, it's a protection. Somewhere deep down, we believed we had to be hard to survive, that we couldn't trust love. So we got mean, sometimes even meaner than the world around us. It's not who we are, though. And when we admit our defensiveness for what it is, we give others permission to consider a different possibility. That maybe they're not alone. That maybe the world isn't as cold as they thought. That's how trust is rebuilt. Not in big dramatic acts, in small truths. When we all begin to speak that way, something shifts. Love stops being a concept and starts being a current, not sentimental, not forced, present, strong, clean, honest. Without that honesty, we stay in a fog. We keep trying to protect ourselves by making others wrong. It doesn't work. It only deepens the separation, and we start to believe our needs and their needs are at odds, that to win, someone else has to lose. That's not true. We're not separate like that. The more you know yourself, like really know yourself, the more you start to feel what others are holding too. Not through effort, not through psychic ability, just through clarity. When your mind is no longer hiding from itself, others' minds become readable. Because deep down, it's all one field. And in that field, blame falls away. You stop asking, whose fault is it? And start seeing, here's the pattern, and here's my part in it. And suddenly, you're not confused anymore. That's where the light comes in. That's where you start to feel hope again. When we hit this point on the path, this deeper awareness, we need new tools. Just like a small business needs new systems when it starts to grow, your inner world can't run on the old habits anymore. What used to protect you now limits you. What once felt safe now holds you back. So you begin to question your reflexes, the beliefs behind them, and then you face the choice. Do I want to stay in this pattern, or am I willing to try love? Not performative love, not saying the right thing while secretly resenting everyone. Real love, the kind that starts by telling the truth, even when it's ugly. The kind that says, I don't want to love right now and I see what I'm doing. That's love too. You can admit hate, admit fear, admit meanness, and that can be more loving than pretending to feel something you don't. The world doesn't need more fake kindness. It needs more honest presence. So don't just ask where you're already loving. Ask where you're still withholding, where you're punishing, where you're holding others responsible for what you don't want to see in yourself. The moment you can admit that, even quietly, even shakily, you're already on the path back. Love isn't something we force. It's something we allow. And the more honest we become, the more space we make for it to move through us. That's the real transformation. Not being perfect, not always being open even. Being willing to tell the truth about where we're closed. And trusting that little by little, The rest will follow, because it will. Love you. Connect soon.